Hello and welcome to the Heaven Bound Sunday School class at the First General Baptist Church in Truman. Our lesson this week comes from the book of Isaiah, chapter 9, the first 7 verses. Isaiah, as most of you know, one of the more acclaimed prophets from the Old Testament. And the people in Isaiah's day desired peace, yet they were living in darkness. Darkness serves as a description of sin. The lost person thinks he's in the light when in reality he dwells in perpetual darkness. Spiritual darkness adds to the all-encircling gloom. However, painted on this background of dark judgment and unbelief is a beautiful picture of salvation for sinful people. Isaiah wrote this prophecy between 730 and 750 years before Jesus was born. He was writing to God's people about a time when God would intervene in human history in a way like never before. It would not be like God bringing light through a pillar of fire during the Exodus, nor like the light of God's glory filling the temple. God's intervention was going to be completely different. God would fulfill the purpose he had made to Adam and Eve in the garden after the fall. The seed of the woman who would crush the head of the serpent under his feet. God would keep the promise made to Abraham in Genesis when he said, "Through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed." God would complete the promise to David in 2 Samuel, where God promised King David that his offspring would have a throne forever. Now we'll read the scripture, like I said, 7 verses from Isaiah chapter 9. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Now, as Isaiah writes, talking about the people walking in darkness, walking is used interchangeably with the word living. So you can, if you wanted to do that, you could say the people living in darkness now have seen a great light or will see a great light. And that light is a figure of speech, but it's talking about God and his divine presence. Now, many people chose then, still choose today, to walk in darkness. He talks about the nation enlarging both in population and in boundaries. As he's at some point he says the gospel will be spread across the nation, and that would enlarge obviously in population, but also in the boundaries. So as the nation enlarged, joy was increased. And the rejoicing is compared to the rejoicing that you would have at harvest, at the end of a long season of work in the field, and then you harvest and you rejoice for the fact that you're going to have food for the winter. And also about the rejoicing that's done after winning a big battle and sharing in the victory. Now, the people's enlightenment and joy would result from the ending of their bondage. Certain evils would have to be removed to make possible the promised joy. There must be a deliverance from the burden of sin. This deliverance would be like the lifting of a heavy yoke, or a figure of oppression, under which the people had groaned. This deliverance would be realized just as certainly as God had given victory to Gideon and the Israelites over their Midianite oppressors. The deliverance promised here is described as an ending of warfare, since Israel had been subjected to oppression through wars. But deliverance such as that from the Midianites, or captivity by the Assyrians, serves only as a type of the greater deliverance from the bondage of sin and death. Only God could accomplish this kind of deliverance. Rescue would come, not in the person of some well-known hero or mighty monarch, but as a child born as humans are born. Now, verse 6 begins a few verses that are generally associated with and widely read at Christmas time. And as Isaiah says, the ultimate reason for joy is the birth of an extraordinary child, a child for us, a child who is given to us. Several names that he has: Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. It says no end to his greatness and peace there in the scripture. And then it also says justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. That's in verse 7. I'll say that again. Justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. When you put your faith in Jesus Christ, you have a wonderful counselor. Are you looking for someone who will clear up your confusion and give you wisdom? When you believe in Jesus Christ, you are trusting the mighty God. Do you feel helpless in a confused and angry world? When you believe in Jesus Christ, you have an eternal Father. Do you feel like you have no one? When you trust in Jesus, you have the Prince of Peace as your ruler. And I'd like to wish everyone a very, very Merry Christmas.